in the machine, learning more about the machine myself, doing what we're doing now. I'll be doing more in the for dentists and a lot to do with compliance and stuff. What we need to probably get between each other is who is gauging to what was it that you normally deal with? Thank you, Mandy. You're a star. Coffee, very
Say hello to Mandy for me. I've emailed Mandy quite a few times.
Yeah, will do. She's just cleared off. He's so your end user is you're training podiatrists.
Well, foot health practitioners.
FHPs, right? Okay. And who's governing FHPs?
Nobody.
Semi not, right? FHPs, because you are dealing with I'll go through with you and I'll say the same.
Yeah. Can I just stop you there, Will, 1 second? Obviously, I've got Teresa, got Rachel, I've got Heather as well. Heather only signed up to our course yesterday. So apart from Rachel, the others have not had their training. So they'll know nothing probably about sterilisation, or next to nothing. I don't want to be ignorant. They've got the manuals. They might have read up a bit about it, but these are complete beginners. They don't know anything about autoclaves, maybe.
This is what I say. I say when people come to our factory to do training, it's lighted. It is awful, isn't it? I say, look, I'm going to go through everything from the basics, right? And cherry pick out of it what you need, because there might be people in here that want the training that are further on than others, but I don't want people missing out and stuff. So I'll go through a lot, what we recommend people do, why we do it, and then if you've heard about it before, that's fine. Just say, oh, I know that bit, but then other people might not. So just cherry pick out the things you need to know. I'll just go through a lot. I think that's the best way to do it.
Well, one thing I want you to discuss, obviously, we're going to be talking about autoclaves, because autoclaves is the standard of what practitioners should be using for sterilisation.
100%. Dealing with the public, that's why.
Well, not just the public, but it's also high-risk patients as well, isn't it? Elderly people, diabetics.
Diabetics, I didn't know because it's FHPs are qualified to work with diabetics and stuff, are they?
Yeah. But one thing that disgusts me is when people go to care homes, they do cold sterilisation, some of them.
No, that's absolutely ridiculous.
So, I mean, I want you to discuss cold sterilisation and why it shouldn't be done. Dry heat sterilisation. And one of my bugbears is people who go on about pressure cookers.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what then. Cold sterilisation is no longer a thing. We deal with it. Have you ever heard of a company called Sterex?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, Sterex, they mostly deal with some small into podiatry foot health practitioners, mostly to do with electrolysis. They had a bottle of stuff that they used to call a sterilisation liquid. It's 40 quid a bottle and you can sterilise your instruments with it. As soon as somebody caught wind of that, there's no such thing now as cold sterilisation. It can only be called disinfection. Like barbicide, disinfection. Like chemical sterilisation is no longer, it's just disinfection. And disinfection won't stand up in the court of law. So bits and bobs like that, is that what they want to know?
Yeah, so that's one of the things, isn't it? Obviously, you've got to cover your back because, insurance companies will insure you, but as soon as something goes wrong, that's it.
Oh, they look for a way out all the time. 100%, you got it. You have got it. And do you do in-house training? Oh, that's going to start doing it. Let me get rid of that.
Crystal, hello, by the way. You're all on mute, so you can't talk to me at the minute.
Morning.
Hey, who managed to talk? Did you unmute yourself? Go back on mute.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as you come off mute, you'll be the focus of the screen.
That's it.
We'll go on gallery then.
Get yourself back on mute. I'll put you on mute. There you go. What we'll do is at the end there, we'll do a question and answers thing. So if anyone wants to ask a question to you, they can ask one towards the end. Yeah, we'll leave 10 minutes for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if we've got something between you want to nip it in the bud, I'm happy to stop and go through an answer. If you want to do that, it's up to you how you'd like to roll, because this is obviously a little bit. Usually, this is for me. It's like face to face. You're there with everyone, gauging what's going on. So that's what I was going to ask you. Like, whereabouts are you based? Is it something you'd like to do in house?
I did ring for you this morning.
Oh, having a chance to sit down and go through something like this is a rarity for me at the moment.
I should have planned it days ago, but I thought I'll give him a quick ring this morning and just chat through what to run through.
Really sorry, I was in this morning, and then the proverbial lit the fan on how to shoot out somewhere quickly and get it sorted because we didn't know anyone else.
Yeah. So obviously we know cold sterilisation is a no-no. What about people that say dry heat sterilisers?
Dry heat sterilisers, there's no difference for you going home and sticking them in your oven. Then there's no cycle. It just tells you a recommended how long to leave it on for. And it's, how does the dry heat, if you're not going to be getting into really any nooks and crannies, you're actually having to, like, it's more like surface heat. You've got nippers and forceps. You're going to have to heat that up to a certain temperature to even get the heat in there. For me, I mean, there isn't a cycle on it. With an autoclave, a steam sterilisation, you've got a scientific proof that if you've got a hollow, any instruments with a crevice or a nook or a cranny in it, a pouch, anything porous, a tube, that it's scientifically proven that the process they go for sterilisation, it kills 99.9% of the bacteria. Scientifically proven, facts passed the portal.
Steam penetrates absolutely everywhere.
It does if you do the right things with it. So you've got different cycles you can do. If you want a quick cycle, you just got your solid instruments in there. You can run that through a steam sterilizer in about, you can anything under sort of 25-ish minutes quickly. And then you can put sealed pouches in there. Now, this is what they recommend to do with most anything you want to do storage-wise, any domiciliary work. What you can do is to go down. They base it on dentists. Dentists at the end of the day, it's like, well, we don't do the same as the dentist. I mean, if you break it down, you do. To be fair, you're a practitioner, you're dealing with the public, and you've got instruments. It's just a different way of what they're doing. I mean, if you've got to do an operation on someone's foot, it's as intrusive as someone just probing around your mouth as a dentist. So what they do is they've got instruments. They pre-pack them in a sealed pouch, put it through an autoclave on a vacuum cycle, which removes all the air from the pouch, steam penetrates in there and dries it, which it comes out crisp and dry in a pouch, and you can store that for up to 12 months. Just like that.
Exactly. So obviously, like I said, there's some students that have not been on this course yet. So this is something we run through. So when we say pouches and sterilisation, they won't know that we're talking about these. So instruments inside.
As you can see there, you've pre-packed your sets in a pouch. And then you're going to go to your client's house and you're going to open them and then use them straight away. Now, if you're doing dry heat sterilisation, that pouch is going to set on fire. If you're going to take them out of a dry heat sterilizer and put it in the pouch hasn't been sterilised. So you don't know what you're putting your instruments into. And then if you don't use a pouch, you can dry heat sterilise them or whatever. And then you're going to take them to your client's house. And the area between you taking them out of the sterilizer, autoclave, whatever, so that's your area for cross-infection. What you want to do is you want to minimise the risk of anything going wrong. For me, when you do the pouch sterilisation, I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you do the best operation you can on a person in a care home or at their house, especially domiciliary work, or even if you've got like your own little practice or whatever, if they go home and get an infection, regardless who fault it is, the first person they're going to blame is a person that's done any sort of operation on them. So if you, as the professional person, you're dealing with the public, you've got a duty of care to give them. If you can say that you have done the best in your power to present your client with a sterile instrument, and then you've opened the instrument on just before working on them, I think you've minimised any risk of cross-infection. And if, say, for example, in the world that we live in now, we're going down the route of the Americans and everyone's trying to sue each other. If you were to ever go to court with I'm talking worst case scenario. This is not a very thing, right? So they're not scaremongery or tactics here at all, but you do get the odd person. You hear about horror stories, but you want to put your mind at ease so you don't have to do that. If you ever got put in a court of law, just saying that they would look at your process on how you take your due diligence for your sterilisation. Now, if you are using a vacuum sterilizer, you're pouching, because with all of our sterilisation, you actually either get a printout or a USB of that cycle that says on this time, on this day, on this batch number, these instruments were sterilised and then used on this patient. If that ever came down to a court of law, there's nothing more you can do and the case would be dismissed. Because everything that you've done in your power to bring the correct processes and sterile instruments presented to the public is what you've done. It's fine. If you've got a slightly deferred way of sterilisation, like the pressure cooker type ones, or I mean, we'll go past cold sterilisation because you can't call it that anymore. There's no such thing from what I've learned.
It's called disinfection.
It's called disinfection, exactly. So disinfection is not sterilisation, and that is not good enough for the public. Now, if you use one of these pressure cooker type sterilisers, or even an oven one, right, which is, again, you could just go and use it in your own oven if you wanted. There's no difference. As soon as you've taken it out of the steriliser and it's not in a pouch anymore, it doesn't become. It's gone through a steriliser. It's been sterilised, but it's no longer sterile because you've taken it out. It's not sterile now. If it's in the pouch, it's still sterile. Yeah. If you take it out the autoclave, it's sterilised, but not sterile. And there's a difference there. And then as soon as you take it out and put it into you disinfect a tray to put all your instruments in, and then seal the tray, that's not sterile. That's sterilised in disinfected. Then you've got to travel it to wherever you're going, and how are you going to store it there? I think if there was a set rule, which I believe in the future there will be, especially because we're dealing with the public one-on-one, I think there will be a set rule put in the future, and I think there will be a set of guidelines. But until then, you've just got to be seen to be doing your best.
Yeah, I'm doing the right thing.
I believe the best is with a vacuum. You don't have to ask me. You can use even vets now are getting put under a lot more pressure because, believe it or not, I went to a vet the other day and he said, "Oh, do your autoclaves come with they come with the data loggers and printers?" And I was like, "Yeah, but why do you need them at vets?" And I was like, "Well, because we did an operation on a dog the other day that died. It was worth 15 grand, and I had to prove that I did my sterilisation correctly because somebody's lost that." So it not just in dentistry where it's hard, it's getting squeezed more in veterinary, podiatry, in anywhere to do with the public, whether it be human or dogs, believe it or not. Everybody's been, going towards the vacuum autoclaves. We've actually discontinued our range of. Are we there?
Just discuss vacuuming for the autoclave. And like I said, there's only Rachel that's got an autoclave. Right. The others that are on here again have not come for their training, so they're not going to understand maybe what a vacuum autoclave is. Okay. I know you mentioned the pouches, which that's what it means, but
yeah, okay. So a vacuum, there's three, but they're complicated. There's two different ways of sterilising. You can do an N type, which is a non-vacuum steriliser, or a B type sterilisation. Now, what the N type does, it just heats up to a temperature and then cools down again, and that's been sterilised, right? But as soon as you open the door or the lid or whatever you use, when you take it out there, it's now no longer classed as sterile.
That's because there's bacteria all around us in the atmosphere. Yeah. And
when you take out your instruments from there, and it's been a steam and pressure, the two things that bacteria require to grow is damp and warmth. Very good. And when you take it out the sterilizer, unless it's crisp and dry, which you get out of a B type or vacuum sterilizer, you've got even though it's been sterilized, you've still got a small area where you can get bacterial growth to cause any sort of infection. Now, and there's another difference as well. If you're using any nippers or forceps, when you just heat up to a sterilization point and cool down again, that's just sterilizing anything on in the area. Pressure will get in, but when it comes to a vacuum sterilizer, you can actually pull air out of hollow tubes. Now, if you imagine a hollow tube and say it's just out in the atmosphere filled with air, and you create air either side of this hollow tube, it will force an air in the middle of the hollow tube. Now, air will act like an insulator, and you won't get to the required temperature for the required time for sterilization. 134 degrees for 4 minutes, 126 degrees for 15, 121 for 20, right? That's what they say is scientifically proven to kill the worst bacteria you want to kill, which is called Staphylococcus, but I won't go too much into that. That's just the bacteria you aim to kill, and that's what we base our rules and guidelines on. So the vacuum autoclave will remove the air out of any hollow tubes, any clothing that's autoclavable, drapes, because that's got, little air pockets within it, and any air within the chamber. And then when you sterilize, you've removed all the air, so you can, have true sterilization. And again, it has a knock-on to effect where if you're doing that, what more can you do when it comes down to the crunch of, And for me, it's almost a little bit like risk management in what you're doing. Manage the risks, manage tripping up. I mean, it's almost having a little bit of ease of what you're doing. Only because, look, I'm not a particularly old chap. I've been doing the job for quite a while, but you get to see and learn and see different people's experiences and circumstances in things of what have happened. You see some bad things, but you can see how things that, especially like in dental, when they've got spot checks from the Care Quality Commission, or what's known as CQC, what could have been avoided, and headaches that could have been avoided just doing things a slightly different way, or the correct way in the first place, if that sort of makes sense. Like just knowing what to do, and knowing if you got into the situation that you're completely covered in the way that you're doing stuff, because a manufacturer who makes like autoclaves such as ourselves, and like a next generation training is teaching you how to do that. You've been educated in the way to do it correctly. So when it comes down to you've got two people to rely on and have a bit of backup and stuff like that. When if you ever came into any sticky situation, I believe that us working together, and you can have a risk-free way of working. I mean, the things that will come into real big risk is if you ever worked into a care home and anybody's diabetic. Now they can't feel any infection or anything they get in the bottom of their foot. And say, for example, you see some absolute horror stories, something going seriously wrong and somebody potentially losing a limb or a life because there's been an infection in it and they didn't know about it because they're diabetic, they can't even feel it. So you've got to manage your risks in that way as well. I mean, there's so many things that you're preventing a headache with by doing something the right way in the first place. I mean, we've actually changed the way that we run a business. We used to make vacuum and non-vacuum autoclaves, but the way that the world is going, right, we've just discontinued our non-vacuum autoclave range completely and just have a vacuum autoclave, which will, regardless what happen, will even if you use the non-vacuum cycle, it will still run a partial vacuum anyway. Because even though when they first came out, the vacuum autoclave about 20 years ago, they were a bit taboo about reliability and all of that. But it's the same when anything first comes out. Now, it's every dental practice you go into will only have, you usually, well, I'd say probably over 60% all got vacuum autoclaves. That's just the way things are going. And the worst thing that I would suggest that you want to do is invest in something that you think is going to be doing you over the next 6 years. Like, I don't know, you could be invested a lot. You got to get off, start your business somewhere. So you might buy. A lot of people think, oh, they're slightly cheaper. I'll buy that hot type autoclave, or that's cheap non-vacuum autoclave off the internet. But in 3, not even that, probably less, 2 years time, they could be obsolete. There's nothing to say it won't be, but they'll say, well, you can't use that anymore. So I'm a big believer of doing things the right way in the first place, and then to be fair, I'd be rest assured that knowing that I was doing it right myself, if I'm honest.
One thing I noticed with your autoclave compared to the old one that I had, the old one is by a company beginning with P. You'll know the name.
Yeah.
It does come out a lot drier on the solid cycle.
Yeah, we will do. Again, what we try and do is there was also a brand of autoclave is very, very popular called Their Little Sister. I mean, I'm not going to say anything about it. They've been around for years and years, but when the cycle is finished and you get them out, the tray's always soaking, and so is your instruments, right? Again, we go back to the topic of a warm, damp environment for bacteria to grow. When we were making our autoclaves, we decided we'd make an autoclave with an N type or a B type cycle, non-vac for quick stuff you can take out straight away, and a B type for the stuff that you can put in pouches or is hollow, or sometimes veterinary people like do their drapes, or if you've got something you rest a foot on, you can get them autoclavable. So we do both. But what we did decide to do is, when we were developing our autoclave, is even though you can do the non-vacuum cycle, the stuff wants to come out reasonably dry, depending on how much you put in there and loads of stuff. So you can use it a lot sooner and you can be more confident in using it yourself. Yeah, we put a lot of development into our stuff. I don't want to be too much of a salesy video. I'd rather it be more of an information for yourselves. But it is more about getting the information out there. But what we believe in making our autoclaves, it's the MDS Medical. We're a family-run company, and it's me and my father that do it. He's been doing it for.
Your father, Dave, then?
Father Dave, yeah, that's it. But
That's the one.
he's been doing autoclaves for years, working with the government and stuff like that. So there's been a lot of technology that goes into it, and I'm already trying to learn something new and just trying to learn my job all the time, really, because if people comes to me for a question, I'd love to be able to give you an answer with whatever it is. So obviously information is key. But going back to where we are on the autoclave side, it's I think you can probably respect now how quite important it is. It's not just getting your instruments done to get out there. You've got to have a little bit behind you. And processes, it's not a long process. I mean, if I can see everything from my side of the coin, right? I make autoclaves, okay? So I'd love everybody in the world to have one, but I've got to look at it from the people that, from the other side of the coin. What, is it going to be a pain to use, right? Is it going to be taking a lot out of my day to do this, right? I'll try and make a scenario which is quite, it comes around a lot, right? Care homes. How can you sterilize enough stuff to go to a care home? You've got two options. Number one, you can bring your sterilizer to the care home and do it then. Number two, absolute nail on the head, pre-pouch. Take your stuff there. Have enough to do it.
You know what I once got told though?
What's that?
So this was, I've got to be careful what I say, but it is someone that came on one of my courses, and I just wanted to say that those that have not been, Rachel can back me up because she's done the course. Day one, first thing in the morning, first presentation is autoclaving and sterilisation, and drumming it into students from day one. I had a student that had done this course. She got an autoclave. She was doing care home work, and someone said, it was on our old forum, so on Facebook we had a next generation training forum, which I deleted because of things like this. Someone said, well, what do you do for care homes? And she said, oh, we call sterilise at lunchtime. So I said, well, what do you do in your clinic? She says, I autoclaves. So I said, well, why are you treating people different in a care home to in your clinic? Why are you dropping standards? She goes, well, you can't have 20 sets of nippers for doing a job. I said, of course you can. Because once you bought them nippers and all them instruments, you don't have to go buy them again. You've got them for God knows how many years. So why would you cut corners? I mean, they're even more at risk because they're probably not as hygienic as maybe someone living in their own home that's more able-bodied.
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And also, if something goes wrong and somebody comes and looks at your processes, I mean, there's a large can of worms there. I mean, if you
people that do care homes, they earn a lot of money from doing it because they've got the volume there in one go. So, you might have to just do that one session to use the money to invest in all your instruments. And once you've got your instruments, after that, your next visit and your visit after that, it's all profit.
Absolutely. Absolutely that. And you've got to think as well, imagine you were putting your, you've got two options, right? You've got somebody you're very fond of, like, I don't know, I've got a very elderly nan. She's 86 years old and lives with my parents because, she's on her own and stuff like that. I've got two options. Number one, sending her to somebody that does something that a sterilizer that I've provided with, or whoever's provided, a vacuum autoclave. Hello. A vacuum autoclave that, with that does pouches and all of that, or somebody who does cold sterilisation, right? To be fair, I'm not being funny, but I know exactly who I'm going to send that to every single day of the week. And you've got to take that into account. Plus, look at it from a business point of view. Somebody knows that you do a job a certain way. And they think, right, so I'm taking them to so-and-so, and say you're in the same price bracket as someone else. What's your unique selling point above somebody else? Your unique selling point can be that, well, that's fair enough. I don't know how anyone else does my job, but this is how we do our job, and how we look after our patients with sterile instruments, pre-pouch, or done every single time we use them on there. I mean, for me, that's a big selling point. Going
back to these again, when I go to a new patient's house, I don't take on any new patients, but in the past, when I've been to a new patient, I always get that packet out, and I always say these are being steamed in an autoclave, sterilised.
I think there's actually a...
Then I open the pouch up. Hey, Rachel, you wanted to talk?
Yeah, exactly the same. I always say, have you been to somebody like me before? Yes or no? And I just always say, well, they should always be taking your stuff out of a pouch like this. Always.
Yeah.
And then they probably say, no, they didn't do that.
Yeah, I'd say 9 times out of 10 they didn't. And I reckon on that pouch as well, you'll see something on the back of it which says, if been through a steam sterilizer, it'll change colour. You can show that to the patient, bang, and you know.
If anyone can read it.
There you go. That's changed colour there.
The brown.
Brown through a steam sterilizer. The top arrow is brown because it says when the color turns brown, this has been through a steam sterilizer. Yeah. Okay. And you can show your patient then. I mean, even if patient had something or they would get an infection afterwards, just say they're going to be like, well, I know it's not from the instruments because they've shown me the sterile instruments themselves. Do you know what I mean? So it's, and to be fair, it ain't going to be the instruments that's giving them the infection if they do get one. I mean, you can do the best job in the world, but if somebody goes home into the environment, their home environment that's not very clean or whatever like that, then you've got to just be saying, look, I've done my best.
Off top of your head, Will, how long are those sterilised for? What would you say? That pouch until they're open.
12 months if sealed before they go in a steam sterilizer. You've got a 12-month shelf life.
I'm glad you said 12 months because that's what I've always said, but I didn't notice until today. It says shelf time minimum 6 months after sterilisation on this packet at back.
There used to be rules and they've changed so much, right? So if it's good enough for a dentist, right, and until the rules change in the HTM 0105, which is the Health Technical Memorandum, in which is done by the government, the NHS, and decided for by authorised persons, and it's got a long way and scientifically proven and all of that jazz. If it's good enough for dentists, I'm going to say it's good enough for you. But in the same breath, if you've got instruments you're not using for a year, you could probably do with being a bit busier. So it's a bit of a you're going to be using instruments within 12 months anyway. But if it's good enough for a dentist and you can refer, because it's sterilisation in general, it's not just aimed at dentists. Health Technical Memorandum is on the link on our website. Go towards sterilisation and it will tell you there. And even better, it will tell you the processes for doing your sterilisation. I mean, we can get some information put ready for you as well. There's something called best practice in which to follow to get the ultimate way of recommended sterilisation. I'll quickly scan through the process for that. The best practice is you get your soiled instruments. You've got an instruments wash sink. You scrub your instruments in there. You then put them in an ultrasonic bath. Now, when you're cleaning instruments, you've got nippers and forceps and stuff like that. You've got like a hinge where you're going like that. You probably can't get your brush and clean in there. So what you can do is get a ultrasonic bath. And it's only a small little, everyone says it's got a little net that you drop into the water. It looks like a bit like a chip fryer, right? It's not very big, but you place your instruments in there and you drop it in there, put the lid on it, select a cycle to run, and that's with sound waves cleans into the nook and crannies that you can't see. So it will knock the dirt that builds up in your nippers and stuff like that. If you scrub off the visible soiling, next you clean off what you can't see, dry, pouch, sterilize, store. So that is best practice. It's best practice. Scrub the things off you can see, the visible soiling. Ultrasonic off the bits you can't see, because a lot of times you get a little bit of confusion with a sterilizer is a sterilizer, and any cleaner, it's not an autoclave cleaner, it is a sterilizer. It will push dirt out with pressure and sterilize it, but you still have sterile dirt on it. So you want to do clean it first, sterilize it, store it. So clean off what you can see, ultrasonic what you can't see, and that will remove it. Actually would stop the build-up of dirt in your forceps and whatever, and nippers or whatever, and it'll make them last longer. And then dry them, then autoclave them, then store them. That is what is known as best practice. And if you were doing that, they come up in a court of law, then what more can you do?
Then I want to discuss with you water. Now, throughout the sterilisation process here in my clinic, when I'm doing these for my own private patients, I use distilled water in every process. So scrubbing instruments, distilled water. Ultrasonic cleaner, distilled water. So then I know if any water that I've used in that cleaning process gets into my autoclave, it's not going to damage my machine.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to go through that in a minute. But before you go, get my charger out because my phone's about to die. And there's a card. Charge the red one in the front, please. Thank you. So the reason why we use, I recommend, you've now hit the nail on the head there, Chris, to be fair. Any water that you're dealing with, so when you have an autoclave, you have in there, you've got lots of devices that will heat up, and any device that will heat up and create steam has the potential to block. You might get limescale in your water. That's going to block your steam sterilizer, and that's going to, you know, really break anything that heats. Calcium and limescale will stick to, and that ruins everything. So water is very important. There's three.
What's the implications then if you do get? I know you just said it blocks up your autoclave, but what's the detrimental effect of that limescale from normal tap water getting into the autoclave? You know, what is the parts that are going to have to be changed? Is it really going to damage it long term?
I've had people that use a brand new autoclave, and they use tap water, and it didn't even last a month. And I'll tell you why. You've got a steam generator, which is a block with small veins that go through it. And it heats up to 200 degrees. You pump water in one end, and steam comes out the other end. Simple as that. Those small veins will be blocked. What it can do as well, it can flake off. So you get flakes, and it looks like sand and little bits of white nuggets in the autoclave. That will then get washed through the autoclave, block filters, go through valves, get clogged in door seals. It's it's quite a big problem. So if you are getting distilled, deionized, or reverse osmosis water, then that's fantastic. But now here is an issue. Somebody recently went to a discount store called QD stores, because what they were doing, they're buying the deionized water, thank you so much, from Tesco, and then they thought, oh, I can actually save a few quid by going to QD discount stores. QD discount stores do not tell you in what grade they sterilise they distill their water to. I'm going to have to change the side because I need to charge my phone, so I hope that's still okay. There we go. But they don't tell you what grade it was. So it was only, it was half tap water, half water. So what we recommend is you can buy something where you distill your own water. You pour tap water into a bowl, put a lid on it, it distills it for you. In 3 hours' time, you've got 4 litres of distilled water. It's quite power. It uses a lot of power, basically. Which is not ideal, especially in this day and age. I've had
Must be cheaper in the long term to have a machine to do it though than to buy it.
Yeah, it depends really. I would say so, because you're not paying yourself. Let me just take my cover off because I'm really struggling here. Any sort of battery power. There we go. Because if you've got to travel out to go and get your water from Halfords or Tesco and all of that, you've got to get in your car and go out there and get it. Whereas if you're doing it at home, it might be using a bit on your electricity bill, but I'm pretty sure it's quicker, easier, and cheaper than going out and getting it in your house. Am I still on the screen?
Yeah, you're still on screen. Everything's good.
Good, because because the rest of everyone else is gone at the minute, so that's cool. It's asking me to put a background on it, but there we go.
Oh, we can still see you. You're fine.
There you go. So that you got a distiller as well. You can have a filtration but I mean that's mainly for clinics. We do something that calls a reverse osmosis water system, which is where you get your water through filtration, just another tap on your worktop. It's £500 for the unit, but they're bloody good. A distiller is about £250 for a unit, but will use more power. Or the other option is, until for example, you're using enough water to warrant that, you will you can go out and buy it from Halfords. That's I think it's about £4 or £5 for 5 litres, I believe. So I don't think that's too bad. But there's three good options of getting the correct water for your autoclave. If you are ever worried about that, we actually sell a little test meter. Don't have to buy them from us. Can buy them from anywhere, but we sell ours because we know that they work. It's called a TDS meter. And TDS stands for total dissolved solids. And you just plonk it in your water and it will tell you the reading of the water you got. But then it's a bit worrying when you put the tap water next to it. So here in Corby, where we're based in the Midlands, if you go further up north towards Sheffield, the water tends to be a little bit better. You go down towards London, the water becomes a little bit more harder. So here, if I want to use water out of what I'm buying for distillers or out of distilled water, I expect the reading to be about 2 or 5. Tap water is anywhere between 300 or 400. And if you go down to London, it's +5. So that's the difference in the water you're putting in the autoclave. Now, in that 300 or 400, that gives you vitamins, minerals, calcium that you want as a human being, but the autoclave does not want. So if you can take that into like account of the difference between the water we put in the autoclave, which is like around between 0 and 5, and tap water, which is where we are between 300 and 400 things it doesn't want. That's a huge, it's a huge jump, isn't it? Massive.
My next question to you, because I've never got a definite answer. So when I used to have my previous autoclave serviced, I once asked the guy, I said, ultrasonic cleaner fluids, if you get any on your instruments, does it damage your autoclave, yes or no? And then I had a sales rep come and see me, and he said, so the engineer said, no, don't get any fluid on your instruments in your machine. And then a sales rep said, oh, it's absolutely fine for autoclaves. I mean, I've never bothered with it. I just use distilled water. And I think from using distilled water, because it takes all the lime scale and other stuff out of normal tap water, I don't think it leaves my instruments looking that bad anyway.
No. So I had a meeting with an ultrasonic company because for me, information and education is key. I said, what would you recommend doing? Because they said, well, we do have a cleaner. I said, right, how does that cleaner react at 134 plus degrees? And if the ultrasonic company doesn't know the answer, how the bleeding hell am I supposed to know? So I said, give me a recommendation. She goes, right, if you're going to use any chemical, a chemical can be bloody fairy liquid. Scrub your instruments with your chemical, or with any cleaner, hand cleaner. I mean, if the cleaner is going to be bad for your hands, I'd probably keep it away from an autoclave. So you can use fairy liquid, whatever, right? The reason why people use a cleaner or an enzymatic cleaner for a ultrasonic bath is to do with dental testing. And they do something called a soil test and a foil test. The foil tin foil has to be cut with the ultrasonic waves to make sure it's working properly. And a soil test has to clean a soiling inside a tube. Now, the enzymatic cleaner helps to do that, okay? You don't need to do that as an FHP because you don't have to do the tests. So that's what it's for. Now, the best way to do it in my eyes is any chemical used to be done hand scrubbing in the sink, then transport to the ultrasonic bath, potentially rinse first if you can, but if the ultrasonic bath's got distilled water in it, that'll get all the bits off you can't see. But when you transport it to now the autoclave, you have just distilled water on your instruments before it goes in, and that can't be any effect to damage the autoclave at all there.
So that's answered that question then. Don't bother with ultrasonic cleaning fluids.
I definitely would not. There we go.
So what would make instruments rust then? Do you think it's maybe when people have used tap water and they just leave them to dry naturally and they don't dry them afterwards? Because I've never had the problem, but I've had some students that I've sold instruments to that said, Chris, these nippers are getting a bit tight in the joints and looking a bit rusty looking. And well, I've never had that problem, so I don't know sometimes what they do that I don't.
There might be a lot of people think the quality of the instruments, but no one's never going to pay. There's two different types of stainless steel. There's 304 and 316, right? And there's...
Oh, you've just broken up, Will.
For a long period of time. If you're going to soak them and leave them on the side in water, you are increasing the chance of one of these ions in the metal becoming wet enough or damaged enough to oxidize. If you sterilize it and dry it straight away, you're minimizing the risk. We have seen it before, and you can get a soaking solution to get rid of any sort of rust. If you do get a build up of it, you can get rid of it basically. And I can recommend you places to get for. We don't do it, but we can recommend to do it. We can't do everything, we do our best. So you can do that. So the best part about it is to try and, if it's soaked in water, you don't want it to be damp, sat outside in the air, oxidizing. That's the way it is. But what my recommendation to do is keep the cleaning process quite simple. Scrub your instruments, ultrasonic, dry. You can you can air dry if you want, or you can dab dry, lint-free cloth or microfiber, because they don't give you any fluff to go in the autoclave, or any paper. If you're going to dab them dry with paper, you don't want any paper stuck to your instruments before you put them in, because they can block filters. But you shouldn't really get the issue with them, to be fair, with rusting. If you got, we deal with a few good quality podiatry sort of groups, and they we don't usually get a lot of problems with the rusting. So bit of an odd one, that is.
Okay, so your machines then, why your machines maybe stand out to other machines, and tell some of these students that are waiting their courses the risks of buying some second-hand machines.
Well, number one, 40% of all of our breakdowns are eBay buys. People put one on eBay usually for a reason. If someone's got an intermittent problem, they usually try and cash in on it. I think, right, I can sell it and it will work, and it will go, oh, well, it was working when I had it. Do you know what I mean? If you pay an engineer to go out and the engineer goes out and the problem's not there, he goes away again, you come back with this intermittent problem because, you know, you might have a slightly aging machine. You think, well, I may as well cut my losses. I'll stick it on eBay. Well, it worked when I left it there. Do you know what I mean? Second-hand machines, what you're doing is you're taking...
I always say it's like buying a second-hand car.
Wait, well, you're taking a punt, aren't you? But you can have somebody with you to go and check a car around. How are you going to go and check an autoclave around? You're not going to go visit it. I mean, it's a risk in itself. Look, at the end of the day, I'd be a liar if I say some people have taken a risk and it's paid off. But that's to wherever you buy it from. If you're buying a second-hand machine from a reputable company that's going to put a bit of warranty on it for you, that's going to be a little better. But personally, what you're doing, you're buying a machine to then replace it again, because it's not going to be one that's going to do you for years. It's second-hand. It's not new. It depends where you are. I mean, look, at the end of the day, there's so many finance options you can get with any new autoclave. Buying a second-hand one sort of it sort of gets out the window. No one going to give you finance for a second-hand autoclave. You're going to have to lump up for it. Whereas if you're doing that anyway, you may as well put a small amount for a deposit or spread the costs. Say you're going to buy a second-hand autoclave for 600 quid, right? You're going to get a half-decent one. That 600 quid could be put towards getting a new one, spread the cost over finance over your months. And while you're doing that, that autoclave's actually earning you money. So you can pay it off. That machine will be paid off. You can get interest-free for a year. Or be paid
we need to know that you do 12 months, 0% interest-free. So you're not paying any extra for it and you're spreading the cost over 12 months.
Yeah, that's correct. So we'd be then that £600 that you'd be buying, or 300 or whatever you think you're going to be buying towards a second-hand machine, which is unknown, you may as well, in my eyes, stick it into something new, because it's dead money at the end of the day. That you know, you're buying something at second-hand. If it goes wrong, the answer to the person that sold it to you is like, well, I don't know. it's just I
mean, they do sell brand new ones. You can buy brand new autoclaves on eBay as well. But I always say to students, you know, what make is it? Can you get it repaired? Yeah. Can you get someone to service it? Because some of these companies might sell them, but they might not have anyone to be able to repair them or get parts for as well.
Yeah. So we get that a lot, if I'm honest. Is I bought this autoclave on the internet. Can you look after it? And I'll say it's from Vietnam, and I don't even know what that telephone number means. If I'm going to buy the parts for it, which is specific for that, I've got to get in contact with them, pay about 300 quid in shipping to get you a door seal, which makes the best part of 40 quid. So you've got to look at the long run. Established companies are all right. I'll give you an example about ours and other companies. We buy some stuff from Italy. It makes it really hard because the whole Brexit thing now, getting stuff into the country, the paperwork is a lot. You've got to pay someone to do that. So anything from Europe we've had to move and adapt our company a little bit to make sure that we're not putting a premium on our prices. But for example, with our company, everything I've got is here. So if you need a spare part out in the post, if you need it, it's here. You've got to think about that as well. And we've got all of our engineers on the road, 6-7 lads on the road that are readily available to get out to you. And with respect, if you're one of our customers, you're going to look after you like one of our own.
Yeah, that was one of my problems when I had Ricky and George come to visit me. One of my questions was, you know, what if it lets me down on a course? And Ricky was superb in his reply. He just said, listen, we'll try to come out to you as soon as possible, same day if we could do it.
Yeah, exactly. And if we can't come out with you in a reasonable period of time, we try and look at it from your point of view. From our point of view, it's like, well, we'll try and get you in. I can post you an autoclave to keep you going until yours can get fixed. Because look, what we try and do is, like I say, we're a reasonably sized family-based company. We're not massive and corporate. Like you say, if you ring me up, you could be your Chris or Teresa or someone. You're not oh, it's so and so, like the number, customer number, or whatever like that. And that's what we're trying to do. We try not to get so big. The bigger you get, the bigger your overheads. The bigger your overheads, the bigger your prices.
Standards go down as well.
Yeah, so we try and stay as reasonable as we are in the country. But as we get bigger, we've got to find ways to look after you if we can't get out or we're fully booked. So what we say is, I can't get out for you for 2 days, but I can give you an option of posting you something to keep you going, or we're in with a company where you can say, I'll get some disposable instruments sent down to keep you going till we're out. So we've got lots of different options of, I mean, disposable instruments is, we don't recommend doing that as a complete way to run your business. It's expensive. You've got to pay for a bloke in a van to pick it up, and you get a sharp spin that has to be, again, picked up by a bloke in a van. But to get you out of the proverbial, sometimes it's not too bad. But like I say, we would send you an autoclave down to you. If it's under warranty, it ain't gonna cost you a penny. If it's not under warranty, because you're one of our customers, you only have to pay for the postage. So try and be as reasonable as we can, because at the end of the day, sometimes when you're running a business and you're really hard at it, if you've got days where you're not working, it can be quite detrimental to your business. So what we try and do is minimize that and get you something so you can work. So you're always earning money. And if you've got somebody that, if we can work together to get the right thing sorted, then I think that's a good way to work, a good working relationship, not just, oh, it's so-and-so, see you in 2 weeks. Like, what we're going to do for 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the answer you'll get. We get that a lot with the dental companies, big corporate companies. Sometimes they're a bit too big for the boots. And they'll be like...
I've heard a lot of bad stories about a company beginning with E, which sounds like a Microsoft application as well, recently on some forums.
Yeah. The forums saying that you ring them and they can't answer, they don't answer the phone, period. You email them, they don't get back to you for a week. I can't. You can't run a business like that, in my eyes anyway. Like I say, when you're a family business, right, your MDS Medical logo is your family name. So if somebody talks bad about that, that's personally hurts, because it takes you a bloody long time to get yourself a good name out in the field, but it can take you a very short amount of time to get a bad one. A few bad reviews, you're back to where you started. So you've got to stay on top of keeping people happy all the time and making sure you can work and stuff. So as long as, I always say, people are reasonable to me what we work with. We're dealing with the public, tend to be really, really nice. Work together, you get the right result and everyone's happy. So I think that's not a bad way to operate.
So for these students that are on this webinar at the minute and others that might view it, what autoclave are you recommending for them that you supply?
Right,
to start off with as an FHP.
As an FHP, you're gonna, obviously you'll probably be working from your house to start with. You probably won't have, you don't usually walk into a clinic that you already own. You're starting out, you're almost a lone ranger, if you like, and you're going to be doing a lot of domiciliary work. Domiciliary work's a lot of travel. There's a lot of area for cross infection. For me, we do 2 autoclaves. We do an 8-litre and a 12-litre autoclave. They're the smallest ones aimed at FHPs, podiatry field, right? So we're actually not be far off. We've developed a new one, which is very small for exactly this. So watch this space in the next few months. But the 8-litre autoclave...
I'll give us a teaser.
Well, an 8-litre autoclave comes in an oval shape. You see all the autoclaves have got a hole in the middle where you put all your stuff. And all the shelves are square. So what we've done is we've come up with something called a 3-litre autoclave. And you can fit just as much as an 8-litre autoclave, but instead of it being circular like that, you squeeze it like that. You can fit bigger trays in a smaller area. It's quicker, faster, and smaller, basically. So we've just gone through a rigorous 2-year test on that, where I'll give it to my local dentist and tell them to break it, and anything that breaks I'll make better. So they've had it for 2 years, hammering it, and it's good. So that's how we do that. So that'll be on the shelf soon. So it'll be the 3-litre in a few months. An 8-litre or a 12-litre autoclave. Now, a 12-litre autoclave is your medium to busy podiatrist. 3 big shelves in there that you can fill full of instruments. Happy days. A lot of the time, we recommend for people to go for that because you're probably, as I've known into the podiatry sector, you get quite busy quite quickly. And sometimes future-proofing yourself by getting something bigger than you think that you need, because our autoclaves last 10 years plus. So you'd be annoyed if you think, do you know what? I'm having to sterilise twice a night instead of once a night, and that's a bit of a faff for me. So I'd wish I'd have got the 12-litre autoclave instead of the 8. but we recommend the 8 or the 12. If you do get an 8 and you're not fussed about running 2 cycles a night, which probably take 25 minutes each cycle for a full cycle with full instruments in. I mean, I could lie to you and tell you how, if you go to another autoclave company, what they'd say is they'll tell you how quick it runs empty, because that's a really good thing to boast about. Say, oh, my autoclave can do a cycle in 10 to 15 minutes. I said, so can mine with nothing in it. But you're never going to run the autoclave like that. You're always going to run it with instruments in, which takes an extra 10 minutes. You're going to heat the instruments up, sterilize them. So speaking realistically, a vacuum cycle, an 8 to 12 litre are doing about a full cycle between 20 and 30 minutes, and then a quick cycle in 15 to sort of 20 minutes, depending on what size you get, how much you put in it and stuff like that. And that's all it is of an evening, do your sterilising.
That's one thing I always say to my students is you've got to think about the size of the machine you're getting, because, you know, you've got to think about wear and tear on it. If you get a bigger machine, you're going to be using it less. So it's going to last longer than a machine that's smaller capacity. You're going to be using it more frequently. So
you'd say so. And that is some good sound advice, to be fair. I mean, I've got to be honest with you, it's a little bit detriment to ourselves, because I go out to some machines, they're running well into the tens of thousands of cycles. You think to yourself, if you built the machine not as good, you'd be replacing it more often. But they seem to be engineered very well and going very well out there in the field, with 10 years plus behind them, which is quite good. And you know what? It's not the product at the end of the day. It's how you deal with issues and stuff like that. So problem solving is the main thing.
You said you make your machines on site. You make them manufactured.
So
Will's gone. Are you taking over, Rachel?
Do you want me to?
Are you taking over?
If you want. Any questions?
He's just totally vanished.
He has. Yeah,
Totally
it's good what he said, though, isn't it? It's all right. I had a question about ultrasonic cleaning fluids, actually, because it came up on a forum, and I was like, why would you use that? If you use
like I said, I never got that definitive answer from the previous engineer I used to deal with to a sales rep that came around. The sales rep just said, yeah, of course you can. The engineer said, no, I won't recommend it. So it's like, well, who am I supposed to listen to? I kind of listen to the engineer. They know a bit more than a rep, don't they? But
yeah, I think it's right, though, because when you start heating things 134 degrees, you're getting into like scientific territory there, aren't you? You're starting to alter chemicals there at 134 degrees. So
I never bothered with it at all, and I've never had a problem with me instruments looking rusty or anything like that.
I have started, though, putting mine on a slightly longer ultrasonic cycle, and mine warms it up as well with a bit of heat, just because I think it can't hurt, can it? That's the thing.
At all. And obviously, Rachel, you've been qualified for how long? Because obviously there's Therese on here. Therese from Australia. Knows I'm taking the mickey when I say that. Heather only signed up yesterday, and Crystal, she's got a training coming up. I'm going to say soon. I have actually no idea, but I know she's not far off. But you've been qualified for how long?
A year now. Well, November 2021. So yeah. Yeah, I love it. It's great. I love it. I suppose I'm a bit different because I've been slow in building my business up, but honestly, the phone's not stopped ringing for 2 weeks. So
how many on average a week do you think you're doing at the minute?
Not loads, but I am very, very part-time. I've got 3 kids, so but I'm getting my 10 regulars every 6 weeks, but then I have as many like ad hoc ones as well in between, people that come over like twice a year. So I've enjoyed it. It's really good. I love it. I'm just
happy with what you're doing. That's amazing.
Pardon?
Just as long as you're happy with what you're doing, that's the main thing. I think Will's coming back now.
It suits me. Other people are doing more. I'm sure they are that are on my course, but yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Will's just connecting his audio, so he should be back any second.
I'll go quiet then.
I'll ask him to unmute.
Are we back in the room?
Yeah, you are. What happened to you?
Somebody rang me, and what happened is the phone sort of glitched and then turned off.
Never mind.
So
I don't know what happens with these webinars, if it'll totally switch off at 1 o'clock or what, but it's obviously probably
I thought that's what happened, to be fair.
Go on, have your sales pitch.
My sales pitch?
Yeah, go on, you might as well.
Information is key. Has anyone got any questions in the last few minutes they want to go through that we can
I think me and Rachel were just chatting because Rachel's been qualified, so we're just catching up to see how she's got on. But yeah, one of her questions was about the ultrasonic cleaner fluid, which has been answered, hasn't it? But I don't know, Teresa.
Go on.
Teresa, have you got anything to ask? Do you want to unmute yourself, or do you want me to unmute you? Let me just ask you to unmute. There we go.
You know, when you've got your instruments in the ultrasonic.
Yep.
And you rinse them. Do you have to rinse them with distilled water as well before you dry them and then put them into the autoclave?
Yeah, I would do.
Be distilled water that you rinse them with.
I'd recommend doing that, because what you're stopping any chance of dragging the tap water into the autoclave, even though it's not going into the tank. Even if it drips down, it'll still create calcium. It's a good question. It's a very valid question. If you've got distilled water in your ultrasonic bath and no chemical, then they just dry it. You don't need to rinse them again. Absolutely perfect.
Right.
So that's a good question. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was just, if it had chemicals, you'd have to rinse them first, with distilled.
Absolutely.
Okay,
so if
that's
you're gonna,
also, and your prices on, and you recommend an 8 or a 12.
Yeah, and we'll get the 3 litre out there soon. But like I say, we'll never get anything out we're not 100% happy with. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The 8 litre, how much is that one?
It's 8 litre is around 1,900, and then the 12 litre is about 2,100. And then obviously you've got the VAT, and if you want delivery on top of that. But again, if you're doing a 2-year payment, which has got a very small amount of interest, or an interest-free over a year, we don't ask for a deposit up front, so you can split that off quite well. Now, we do other things as well, because obviously you've got to pay for servicing at the end of every year. We can include that, but going through prices, there's a lot to do. I mean, yeah. We're not. For what you're getting, I'd say it's a pretty good deal. And we can do package offers as well. We do so if you're setting up your own surgery, your own thing, we can do a package offer, which means you get everything that you'd need to set up. So with a package offer, let's say an 8 litre package deal. You get the 8 litre, you get the distiller, and you get the ultrasonic bath. So you've got the water that you can create for the autoclave and the cleaner before it goes into the autoclave, all in one package. Now, my computer just turned off, so if you need the prices, go to Chris, but I'd love to get the prices for them, but we discount each individual bit and then put it together in a package for you.
If you take the 3, okay.
Yeah, sure.
It's a good idea. I think having the distiller would be a good idea.
I agree, and the ultrasonic would be perfect as well.
I always say you can't have enough distilled water. I have these 5 litre drums, jerry cans as I call them, and I just keep filling them up and filling them up.
There you go. You can keep them for whenever you need them.
Me too, Chris.
Yeah, can't have enough. I just bought some more off Amazon, I think, actually last week or week before.
Right. Did you run out your stuff?
Yeah. So let's just.
I like the vacuum. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it's the way forward.
Lovely. I said it's so very professional.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guaranteed to be sterile is amazing, and I think your patients will be very impressed.
They will be, especially if you're taking over from a person that hasn't been doing it in a certain way. Because you always think it's going to be so comforting for me to see the way that somebody does a process. If you turn up to do my feet or whatever, and you can see, I can tell, I know that you do this process. I'm already at ease. I'm already at ease on what you're doing down there, because it's very professional, like you just said.
And when you come for your training, it's very professional as well.
Like that.
I've just asked Heather and Crystal if they want to unmute to ask any questions, so feel free to ask anything you want. Other than that,
hi.
Hey, how are you doing?
I don't want any questions. You answered everything I had on my notes. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you. Cheers.
Heather, have you got anything you want to ask?
No, it just looks really interesting, really good.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think this has been a real good advantage for you three, that obviously you're awaiting your training and everything. So it's a really good insight for you three. So I was really glad that you joined. And obviously, Heather, like I said, you only signed up yesterday, didn't you? So
yeah. I'm keen.
Brilliant. And like I said, day one in the morning after we've had a bit of chit chat when you come in, first thing we do is try and drum sterilisation and good practices and being professional. Yeah. The importance of doing it because, if you want to talk about horror stories and things like that, I've got some to tell, but if Will's got any horror stories to tell, by all means, tell some stories, Will, because I love listening.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah.
Experiences of horror stories.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of horror stories I've got. We used to look after a lady who, she was from the Buckinghamshire area, and she was just starting out on sterilisation, and she was like, a lot of people were coming over to her because she was new and FHP, and it's going down the route of, and then she'd just gone from a different autoclave to ours, and she'd gone and done an operation on a very wealthy lady, and the wealthy lady had really, she got an infection, and she'd really decided that, right, that's it, you're having it, sort of thing. She'd really gone on her and put her through her paces and chucked some money at saying you negligence and this, that, and the other. But because the lady from Buckinghamshire, even though she had to go through a pretty poor process and was fighting against somebody who, with respect to her, probably had a great deal more money more than her, what I've been told by her, even though she had to go to court and go this and prove this, that, and the other, because she'd had a vacuum autoclave with a printer, and she could prove that the cycle that she had been running was the instruments for her, the case was dismissed. But the horror story was that she had to go through it in the first place. And she was like, I wish I'd done a little bit more to show her what I was doing in the, because she just had, she didn't explain to take the stuff out and using the instruments on her just out of a pouch. She did that and used it. But the horror story was there are people out there that can do that. Now, bear in mind, I don't want to use any scare tactics on anyone, put them off a job. We've got thousands and thousands of customers, and I've heard this one story. But it's always that one story you think, I'm glad that she did it that way, because if she didn't do a sterilisation that way, imagine how bad the story could have been. Is the one thing about that. And then there's that, obviously, the horror story about the poor girl that died in Nottingham from a dental operation. Turns out they weren't doing this is where it all came off from, really. It takes something catastrophic like that and somebody to probably shouldn't do, because you could probably avoid it, but somebody lost their life because they got an infection so bad and they got sepsis and died. It's a massive thing, obviously, sepsis, especially when it comes down to, you're dealing with, you're diabetic, the old, elderly. It doesn't take a lot to get there. Just do the best you can. Obviously, we're here to give free advice of, what we really think you should be doing, because it can be a tricky world out there. But as long as you've got behind you, good training and good people, we believe that it makes it a lot easier.
I mean, I once had a dental. Sorry, go on. Who's wanting to talk, Therese?
Me, yes.
Go on, you talk.
Sorry, Chris. The printer, is that connected to the autoclave?
Yes, it's integral. It's integral to the side of the autoclave. Each one has got it. It's not got ink in it. It's a thermal printer. It's like having like a till receipt on the side, and it prints out every cycle. And what you can do is the pouches that you've got on the side, if you really wanted to go really to the nth degree, I'm talking like hospital measures. One of my clients has got a little, it's like a rubber stamp, and the cycle that comes out the autoclave, she rubber stamps the bags of the cycle number, and then when she uses it on the client, she puts it on a note. So it's literally traceable, each set of instruments to each client. I was like, that's pretty amazing, because what a lot of people usually do, you either get, you can have a paper diary with your customers, and you can have a paper diary with your printouts, and it's relatable to each other. So you can be like that customer, that printout, and you can tell that. Yeah, really good. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's smart. I like that.
Yeah, both. I learn a lot of. I've got to say, I'd love to take credit for ideas like that, but that's definitely I'm learning that out in the field.
And I got one of your autoclaves in December.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got your 18-litre one because, here I am promoting MDS Medical, and then I'm going into my sterilisation room with my students, and I've not got an MDS Medical autoclave, so I thought that were a bit stupid.
Good lad, enjoying it?
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, I must admit. It's a brilliant machine. Very quick, and like I said, when I put it on the solid run, because we use our items you know, in the trays. We get them done on the solid cycle, and then we're using them within minutes, basically, as soon as they come out.
That's perfect. And like I say, the advice is, as long as you're using them within a 3-hour period in a clinically clean area, that is up to standard. Good enough for dentists, good enough for you.
Exactly. But yeah, it dries them a lot better than what the old one did. But my other one is about 10 years old, so, and I've still got that at this moment in time. So
we've done well out of that.
I just keep it as a spare at the minute, just in case I need it. But yeah, my new one's absolutely superb. Can't fault it whatsoever. It's a good machine.
See, there's been a lot of hard work, and certainly I'd say there's genuine blood, sweat, and tears into going on to sourcing the right things. And I don't know if anyone else has worked with family as well, but you go late at night, you can come to, we should be doing this, should be doing that. But when you get the product at the end of the day, it's something you should be proud of. And I'm very sure that we are.
And I mean, another thing to look at things is, you know, if you were having your feet done, you know, you'd want sterile instruments to be used on your treatment, wouldn't you? So if you want 100%. It on yourself, then why would you not do it for others?
Exactly that. I think that's a very good way to run your business. I think that if you run your business like that, there's only one way, and you can. For me, it's about, you know, when we do stuff and we make stuff, we probably could have cut some corners somewhere, but I've always found that even if you try and do that slightly in the past, it always comes back to bite you in the backside. There's no point. If you get it done right and run your business right, you can always rest up here. Do you know what I mean? It always sits right with me.
I'll tell some stories to my students when they come in, but, you know, one of them was I got challenged on day 5 of the course saying, why? Why do we have to autoclave? It's like, where were you on day 1 in the morning? You know, you've been doing it all week, and then I got challenged on day 5. Why can't we do it like some beauty therapists do? Why can't we do it like some hairdressers do?
Right. Well, you say this now. So I've got, where I live in like the Rutland area, and the beauty therapist, we've now put another one of these test 3-litre autoclaves that are coming out into her clinic, and she's advertising sterile instruments over everyone else, and she's absolutely rammed. She'd taken it on here, and then, because the word spreads. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, especially in the beauty, you go in, you get whatever you have done, say pedicure. It
goes to show how important it is, but it's the people, and if she's advertising sterile instruments.
Exactly. So she's opening a pouch and she's explaining, oh no, we've actually got an autoclave sterilizer at the back, and it's the only one in the area that has an autoclave sterilizer. And let me tell you this, she's absolutely rammed. So she's like, because people are seeing the way we're doing stuff, we're seeing the way that they do that. It don't take long for word to travel around. People talk to each other, especially in a local area like Rutland, smallest county in England. There's not a lot goes on there, so they've got to talk about something. And
I'm not being disrespectful to people in the beauty therapy industry, but you know, there's good and bad in all industries. And some are probably doing the autoclaving, but there's many that probably aren't as well.
No, I don't think there is. A lot of people buy the disposable instruments in now. I've had a word with somebody that was doing it and not, and the quality between disposable instruments and the ones you buy and reuse are second to none. Why would you throw away a perfectly good product? This is what I'm saying. So they've got to compromise that somewhere to be a disposable, or what they call now is a single-use instrument. So you use it once. And if you're buying something, say for example, you buy a pair of nippers for 40 quid, and you buy some single-use nippers for 5 quid, it's paid for itself in probably a week or two's worth of patients. It blows my mind. So yeah, I think that's the way they're doing that. And obviously you're saving yourself money on a bloke having to turn up in a van to get your sharp spin and take it away, give you another one and all of that. So I think it's a better way. I mean,
want to quickly touch on servicing and things like that, because obviously you recommend every year to have your machine serviced. I know gasket seals, it's important they get changed every year, correct?
They do, yeah. So on a service, there are companies around there doing just a service, but look, we have, because the autoclave is in your house or clinic or whatever, you've got to ensure that building or clinic or whatever you've got. So we do a service, and with that we do the calibration of the autoclave to make sure it's getting to the right temperature at the right time. We also do something called a written scheme of examination, which means you've got to be, and all the other engineers, myself, and are a competent person to make sure that's going to be a safe working autoclave. And then we do something called a PVI. That's a pressure vessel inspection. So where all the steam and the pressure and stuff is building up inside, we make sure, and we've got to be qualified to do so, we put a PVI on that, a pressure vessel inspection, to make sure that's good. Now, the insurance company for the buildings will not want to know that if, you know, you've got a clinic, what have you got in there? Or have you got an autoclave? Yes. Do you have this done every year? Yes. We need a certification. Brilliant. And that's what for insurance purposes, and that's a legal obligation on the servicing side as well to get the PDI done, because it's recommended that anything over a certain pressure has to be pressure vessel inspected every year, and a lot of other companies give that with your service, but we do. So you just get the service, so they don't do the legal side of it as well. So
you contact your customers when the service is due, or do you expect them to just make a log of it and contact you?
Bit of both, really. I mean, if you give us more time to get you in with somebody else, it sort of benefits us both, really, doesn't it? So it's completely up to you. Every time we do a service, you get the sticker on the side of the machine, clearly visible for you. Oh, that's due in a month. I'll give them a call. Or if we're going to be down in and around the area, now we're flat out busy as it goes, but we try and leave 3 days for call outs. Other than that, we don't just look after our own autoclaves. We do many different kinds of autoclaves. You know, it gives us a good vision of what everyone else is doing. You see, I'm trying to stay ahead in the game. But yeah, so would also, if we're coming down to any sort of area, oh, you're due in a month, we'll coincide with you. And it's just like, tell you what it is, it's working together. You don't want to be ringing someone up saying, you're due a service. Like, oh, hang on a minute, I could probably wait another month for March. Do you know what I mean? It's just working together. Say, no, I'd rather do it next month. Say, okay, we'll get in contact with somebody else and stuff like that. Trying to run it more as a, like, working with each other to get the job done rather than you're having that. If that makes sense.
My very last question for you, and I did mention it to Ricky and George when they came up, but you answer it for me and these people that are listening that have not got the machines yet. Now, not everyone's going to live in a 7-bedroom detached mansion like you.
Yeah.
So
like
people,
honestly, I wish.
So people that have got smaller homes that might have a garage, you know, I get some students saying, "Can I set it all up in the garage?"
Right.
And I never knew how to answer it until I found out from Ricky.
Answer, and I'll give you it straight away. And I've got the perfect example of somebody who's just rang up. Somebody had bought an autoclave off. Well, I advised him which one to buy because he was looking. He said, "Look, I'm a mobile veterinary clinic. I don't have that much money. These are the choices of autoclaves that I've got." And I was like, "Look, if you're going to buy one of them, even though they're used, I'd recommend this one." He's kept it in his garage and it's frozen. Autoclave's got water in it and small tubes, like we said before, they freeze, it ain't going to work. So if you've got to have it in a garage or an external building, what we recommend is to buy a frostat. Now, they cost 30 quid. And it's a tube you stick on the wall, that mount on the wall, 2 screws or whatever, you can have it on the bench. And if the temperature gets down to anywhere under 5 degrees, this little heater thing turns on, and it keeps the moisture off because it's warm, and it keeps it from freezing. Because if you get moisture in the autoclave or any of the electronics, you know, if you can't have it in the house, do your best to look after it. Is what I'd say. You don't want a dusty environment. You don't want. I mean, at the end of the day, you're investing in a medical piece of equipment. You know, you don't want any dust and stuff from the ceiling falling into the water tank when you're trying to fill it with water. I don't know what people's situation are and, you know, what they can and can't do with, you know, where they live. But I think there's a lot of common sense has got to go into it. And just remember that advice is free, and we are here to help you out if you've got any queries on when something needs to go.
I presume if you keep it in a colder room as well, or if you keep it outdoors or in a garage, surely the machine's going to work harder as well, is it not?
Well, you've got to get up to temperature. You've got to warm everything up. You're going to be paying through that for your electrics and obviously a little bit of wear and tear in your machine. But I've had one this week where, like I said, this chap bought this autoclave and there was a copper condenser on it. The copper had frozen with the water in it, which has made it swell up. And when the heat went through it, it burst. So I had to go back down there and fix this machine that I recommend. He goes, "Why has it gone wrong?" I said, "Because it's frozen. It's been split in the copper pipe. It worked for 3 weeks."
So probably a lot of the problems you have are from the way people look after the machines.
Can be, yeah. So dentists and stuff, and I found people that over lubricate their instruments, the autoclave will wash that out. We've actually come up with a cleaning solution for the autoclave that after the first year, the bottle's £25 and it will last you more than a year. And you put 2 cupfuls of water in the clean tank and it washes the inside of your autoclave for you. All the tubes and valves you can't clean yourself by hand, this solution will do it. But that'll come in. We'll usually do a bit of a demonstration on that and how to do it when we come to and come to the first service. But if you've not been that busy, then we'll say, oh, maybe next year, you know.
Well, the webinar hasn't stopped because it's gone pretty much just past 1:15.
Cool.
So I'll just ask again if anyone's got any questions to ask now, and then I think we should let Will go and get on with the rest of his day. Maybe get himself some dinner. I bet he's not had his dinner yet.
Hey, don't worry about me. I can do it, lose some weight.
You and me both then. Has anybody got any questions? Because if not, we'll wrap it up and let Will get off. I think that's a no, Will. So thank you very much for your time.
It must have been good.
Well, yeah, it's been insightful. So thank you.
No, you're very welcome. And then I'll speak to you again same time next month, I guess.
So we were just trialing this, weren't we? Because I put it to Ricky, and he said he'll have a word, and we thought we'd just trial it. And if it seems to do well, it's maybe something we can do a little bit later on in the year for some of the other students.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look,
Only
at
an
the end
hour
of
or
the day, everybody's going to have a different question or a different take on things. I mean, even if it's somebody that wants to challenge, why do we have to do this? Well, for me, it's so interesting to get everyone's different perspectives of stuff. Because number one, I can learn from it. Somebody might ask me a question, I'm going to be like, oh, do you know, I don't know. I try and fill as much information as I can, but you know.
But all I say is everything's just about doing everything the correct way, and just you know, machines that cost that much, they cost a lot of money. So, like you said, it's your house for your business, so you want to look after it and do all the right things for them, don't you? At the end of the day,
you do indeed. What we always find is, we're trying to get to the point now where we're in a decent place in the market making a machine, but we don't have a lot of overhead. We're not a massive company. We are trying to keep it real as a family-based company.
I think you sound very similar to me at the minute, because people have said, why don't you open up another next generation train? It's like, I don't want to, because it'll get too big.
It's not just that. There's more cost that comes in it. I'll have to buy another building, more engineers, your overheads go through the roof, and then you're skyrocketing with all the corporate people. And
quality can go down as well, because other people don't always care as much as you care.
Well, yeah, exactly that. I mean, what our lads we've got here, you've met George and Rick. We've got a really good group of lads here. Do you know what I mean? We've had to kiss a few frogs, but we've managed to get a fantastic group of lads. Same way of thinking. You've got a job to do. You've got to do it to the best of your ability.
That was George's first inductee.
Oh, George?
Yeah, I mean, Ricky didn't have to say that. He should have just let him do it, because I wouldn't have guessed, because he was all right, to be fair, for a young lad.
We do it. As you can probably tell, I'm very pedantic and very passionate about what we're doing and stuff. So I'll try and relay that onto all the other lads that come through the door. I mean, there have been a few lads that have come through the door, and 3 months' time they're going back out the door again. But we've got to have the right people. We really do have the right people to make sure that everyone's looked after.